Waiting in line is now part of everyday life across the country. Socialist price controls, rampant inflation, and a chronic black market means shops simply don't have any essentials. This is a 5-hour line. It's orderly, IDs are checked, and they're brought forward to see what is available. After 5 hours, remember, it's 2 jars of mayonnaise. The inhabitants of a country with the largest reserves of oil in the world are seething.
My turn to buy food is on Thursdays. This Thursday, I couldn't buy even this, because there was no food to buy. In my house, I don't have anything. While they have good whiskey and eat good food and milk for their children and medicines, we don't have anything. We don't have anything in this country.
This is the home of Venezuela's poorest. People dependent on a state that is failing them. Elizabeth Chacon has 4 children. She showed us their meal tonight. So 1 potato and some vegetables. Yeah. There is nothing in her fridge.
People hunt cats and dogs and even pigeons to ease their hunger. People are also reportedly gathering vegetables from the ground and as well as trash in order to eat. The crisis in Venezuela is worsening every day due to the part in shortages reaching 70%. 6 Venezuelan military officials were arrested for stealing goats to ease their hunger, as there was no food at the Fort Manaur military base. And also, as pure
network that show you what it's like when the money runs out and the tempers flare up. These are people in Venezuela seizing food trucks, anything they can get their hands on. A lot of them are moms and dads trying to find some way to feed their kids. That's how bad it's been. Only a few years after Hugo Chavez had promised, almost to the end of time, that all the oil revenues and the taxes on the upper income would support them in an almost idyllic environment that would never end until the rich guys left. The oil revenues stopped, and Venezuela went under martial law. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and this is the kind of thing that no less than Alan Greenspan says is possible here if we don't watch what we're doing here. An exclusive chat with the former Federal Reserve.
Policies put in place by former leader Hugo Chavez are seen as part of Venezuela's problem, though. Price controls on basic goods to make them more affordable, but instead putting off producers because it affects profits. Food shortages and looting are now common. Venezuela has the highest inflation in the world. Plunging oil prices have also taken their toll. Oil accounts for almost all export revenue and funds social programs. A toxic mix that's sparking violence and unrest.
An inflation which officially is calculated at 180%. Some people say it's actually considerably higher than that. I mean, this is a very unstable situation because the oil price decline has been a very, very severe issue for them.
A recent poll shows nearly 70% of Venezuelans want Maduro out this year. If this latest quarrel is anything to go by, he wouldn't go quietly.
Irma is a mother on the verge of a nervous breakdown. That's the result of 5 days without water. This is how we live now as Venezuelans. We've lost our quality of life. As you can see, we were middle-class people, and now we're not even that anymore. Just look at the kitchen. This is how we live now that we have no water. Now it's just arrived.
Water and electricity are both being rationed. Officials say it's due to an ongoing drought, but most Venezuelans believe these shortages are due to wider political instability. Every Friday since the end of April, schools have closed to save power. State employees now only work 2 days a week, procedures more akin to a wartime economy.
Sometimes my daughter bursts with joy in a supermarket when she sees that there is oil. She says, "Mom, there is oil," or "there is sugar." No, this is not what I wish for my country. I've had enough.
At the supermarkets, the queues go down the street.
I left home at 4 in the morning. I went to several places for nothing. All I could buy is a pack of maize flour, no more.
Free healthcare was one of the foundations of the Chavez regime.
These are all the bandages we've got. 6 little rolls. And these here are made in China. Very poor quality. It tears your skin off.
Rising inflation has made getting hold of basic supplies and medicine difficult. The local media has labelled the situation a humanitarian crisis. Patients are dying across the country because of the shortages.
In a grimy, dark hallway in the bowels of a hospital in Caracas. There's no electricity in the morgue for the fridges, and there's no room anyway, so the hall will do. With no medicines to treat him, family members can only offer their presence to Hector Bello. He's unable to move any part of his body but his head. He lies here, slowly dying. It is inevitable. Venezuela's health service can offer him nothing. A little girl is fed breakfast by her mother. She's brought in her food, her bedding, the water and soap to clean her, and the medicine her daughter, Ismael, is receiving. Without their family support, there would be nothing provided by the hospital but the skills of doctors and nurses. Elizabeth has terrible stomach pains, but there are no painkillers to give her. She says the staff are excellent, but that the hospital itself is falling apart. She can't eat anything, of course, but she might not want to. A nurse says that this is the best food they've served in a month. For the past week, we have secretly filmed in 3 hospitals inside and outside the country's capital. The story is the same everywhere. Chronic shortages of everything, even water. Shower rooms are filthy. Toilets are blocked. Nothing can be flushed and nothing can be cleaned. Time and again we found piles of medical waste dumped on the floor. There are no proper bins to take it away. This is meant to be an intensive care ward, an area that very acute patients are brought, looked after and then moved on for specialist care. Probably another hospital. You can see it isn't used for that. In fact, it's not used for anything. There's only one reason for that. They have absolutely no equipment, absolutely nothing of any use, just these beds. So somebody's just sleeping here occasionally. It's not an intensive care ward. Cancer specialist Gabriel Romero has decided to go public. He showed us around his hospital. The only CT scanner is broken and abandoned in a hallway. People are dying, he says, because he has no way of treating them.
We're trying to treat it, but the real thing is that's not the truth. We are concerned. So I don't know what to do because the problem is in high levels and there is no solution.
In waiting rooms and halls, Venezuela's most needy wait in line for help, for treatment, and for medicine. And mainly, there isn't any.
Pope Francis said in an interview published Tuesday that Jesus' call to spread the gospel was no different than the jihad being waged by radical Islamicists. As part of the discussion with Francis Lacroix, Pope Francis said, "I don't think that there's a fear of Islam as such but of ISIS and its war of conquest, which is partly drawn from Islam. It is true that the idea of conquest is inherent in the soul of Islam. However, it is also possible to interpret the objective in Matthew's Gospel, where Jesus sends his disciples to all nations, in terms of the same idea of conquest." Other than attempting to equivocate ISIS's murderous jihad with Jesus' call to peacefully evangelize the world, Pope Francis also claimed that the state of the global economy has widened a perceived gap between Christianity and Islam.
To go out and discourage behavior that they deem un-Islamic. On this night, they stopped to talk to a couple of non-Muslim men who were in a park drinking beer, which is forbidden under Islam.
So we're just reminding the community about staying safe. And in this area, there's a lot of gambling that goes on, a lot of alcohol drinking, and it leads to a lot of problems. So we advise you, and we advise anyone we see, to stay away from these things.
Get them prostitutes off our streets! But the patrols are not always so friendly. Online clips give a very different picture. A woman in a short skirt is abused.
Vigilante!
Cannot trespass in Muslim area.
I'm so...
We don't care if you're appalled at all.
And Miss Mary, it's Great Britain.
We don't care. It's not so Great Britain.
A man the patrol thinks is gay is insulted.
Get out of here quicker then. You're dirty, mate. You're a gay, mate. Get out of here, mate.
At night time it turns into a very ugly place like many of the...
Walking through London with Ramesa, you experience an alternate reality where there is no compromise and all conversations are one-sided.
Ultimately, I want to see every single woman in this country covered from head to toe. I want to see the hand of the thief cut. I want to see adulterers stoned to death. I want to see Sharia law in Europe, and I want to see it in America as well. I believe our patrols are a means to an end.
Says that ISIS's conquest of the Middle East is just like Jesus sending out his disciples. Pope Francis told a French Catholic newspaper, "I don't think there is a fear of Islam as such, but of ISIS and its war of conquest, which is partly drawn from Islam. It is true that the idea of conquest is inherent in the soul of Islam. However, it is also possible to interpret the objective in Matthew's Gospel, where Jesus sends his disciples to all nations in terms of the same idea of conquest. ISIS's war of conquest is like Jesus sending out his disciples." Yeah, I must have missed that Bible chapter where Jesus' disciples beheaded people, forced them into sex slavery, and made them pay a tax on pain of death if they refused to convert. The Pope also said he dreaded hearing about the Christian roots of Europe because to him they take on colonialist overtones. Yeah, if it wasn't for the Crusades, which were a defensive measure against Muslim invaders, most Italian women would be walking around in hijabs right now.
The report goes on, the reason he's doing this is because he's there to hijack Christianity and lead it straight into bondage. He's calling for world government, world taxes, a global cashless society. And notice every other institution is making its move and uncloaking as agents of evil right now because this great battle is now about to be joined. Oh, he wants more immigrants to come to the city of Rome, but none within the gated city walls of the Vatican itself.
20 years. The most confrontational Muslim group here is Sharia for Belgium, which used shouting and threats to shut down a debate by moderate Muslims a few months ago. I sat down and talked to the leader of Sharia for Belgium, Fouad Boukassem, alias Abu Imran. Sharia for Belgium is a small group that a lot of people don't take seriously. But he sounded very serious when he told me that he expects Muslims to rule Belgium and the world.
We believe that the Sharia will dominate. The Sharia will be implemented worldwide.
Sharia for Belgium is a public relations nightmare for those Muslim groups which try to play down their ties to radicalism and Sharia law. Imran was completely open with CBN News, saying Islam and Sharia law are inseparable and democracy is wrong.
Sharia is Islam, to be clear. There is no difference between Islam and Sharia. It's just a name. Democracy is the opposite of Sharia and Islam. We believe that Allah is the legislator.
Many countries across Europe, a culture war over Islam is well underway in Belgium. Last month, the Mosque of Charleroi was desecrated with the mask of a pig head. Then the daughter of the head of Belgium's right-wing party, Anne-Sophie de Winter, posed in a bikini and burqa with the words in Dutch, freedom or Islam. Someone painted over this poster giving her a full burqa. They also painted over freedom, and Sophie de Winter received death threats. Imran went on YouTube to call her father, politician Philip de Winter, a pimp for letting her pose in a bikini.
This community is a dirty, perverted community.
And Islam is flexing its muscle. Girls in bikinis have been attacked, Jewish and Christian symbols vandalized, and in Muslim neighborhoods, Sharia law enforced.
The big cities in Europe are the first places where we can see what will happen when the majority is Muslim. We see it in the big cities first, Brussels, Amsterdam also, Rotterdam, Antwerp.
Sam van Rooij has co-edited an important new Dutch-language book called Islam, Critical Essays on a Political Religion.
Islam is a fascist ideology, and it's not a religion like Christianity or like Judaism. And the danger in it is that it has a religious side, not like communism and Nazism, who are only ideologies.
Coca-Cola's slogan may be "Taste the Feeling," but that might be a problem if you live in South America. The company reported that it was shutting down production plants in Venezuela due to a sugar shortage. The shutdown will affect all Coca-Cola products except for its sugar-free ones like Diet Coke.
Discussion is bedeviled by all sorts of artificial media tweet storms and hysteria of one kind or another. There's a very good argument against the lack of democracy in the EU. Over the last 2,000 years, people have made repeated attempts to unify Europe by force. The EU is a very different project, but it is profoundly anti-democratic. And that's why we should vote leave on June 23rd. Thank you.
Αν κάποιος εργοδότη θέλει να σε εκβιάζει, λέει παίρνω τηλέφωνο του Χρυσή Αυγή. Παίρνω τηλέφωνο και καλό για να σε χτυπήσει. Και πάρα πολλές φορές έχει πάει ομάδα συμμοριών αποφασιστών και χτυπήσανε πολύ άσχημα, δηλαδή γιατί ζήτησε.
30th, 2014. Let's get straight into our news tonight. Top story, Democratic Senator Markey's hate speech bot. Earlier this month, we ran a story on Senator Ed Markey's the Hate Crime Reporting Act of 2014. The legislation proposes updating 20-year-old report on the role of internet, radio, and TV that they allegedly play in encouraging hate crimes based on gender, race, religion, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. And Mark Slavo writes, combined with the new WebBot hate speech tools, could the government then preempt detention and arrest under the Patriot Act or the National Defense Authorization Act, both of which allow for action to be taken against those who threaten national security, yet another broadly defined term.
Incitement to violence, which is a real thing, right next to feelings crimes, having bad thoughts of hate. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Microsoft, they'll ban all of this proudly. They're bragging about it. But here's where it gets super gross. Not only will these companies with the European Union ban anything written that's not written by a happy person, that's what banning hate speech is, they're banning a feeling, but they will positively promote their own happy political thoughts, their sunny ways, you could say. Let me quote, in addition to the above, the IT companies to educate and raise awareness with their users about the types of content not permitted under their rules and community guidelines, the notification system could be used as a tool to do this. So get ready for Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and Microsoft to educate you. Yeah, to raise your consciousness.
The number of deaths from a yellow fever outbreak in Angola has risen to 225, with another 1,600 infected. A huge preventative vaccination campaign launched in February has already reached 6 million of the capital Luanda's 7.4 million inhabitants, but the disease has since spread to 16 of the country's 18 provinces. According to the World Health Organization, the global emergency stockpile of vaccines is already empty.
With superbugs and public health concerns about the limited effect of antibiotics. For the first time in the U.S., a person has been found to be carrying a strain of E. coli that's resistant to antibiotics of last resort. The Washington Post reported the strain was discovered last month in a 49-year-old Pennsylvania woman. She was resistant to colistin, and researchers said it, quote, heralds the emergence of a truly pan-drug-resistant bacteria. Doctor, these findings?
Colistin is an antibiotic that we've actually had for quite a long time, but we use it as a last line. So it's our drug of last resort. And so when patients are infected with some of these superbugs that we've talked about before, where the strain is resistant to pretty much every antibiotic, we rely on colistin as the last resort. And what we find here in this patient's, the bacteria that infected this patient, is that her strain contains one of these mobile genes that confers resistance to colistin. So because bacteria can spread these mobile genes among themselves, it sets up a situation where we can see a bacteria that's resistant to every known antibiotic. And of course, that is a very frightening prospect for all.
Risk being in a post-antibiotic world
It is the end of the road for antibiotics unless we act urgently.
Health and medical editor Dr. Richard Besser. And Dr. Besser, people are canceling vacations to the Caribbean, to South America. What areas are we talking about specifically?
Well, here's the thing. There's 24 different places that they found the virus so far, but the mosquito is in every country in the Western Hemisphere apart from Canada and Chile. And so I understand people saying, well, I don't want to wait until they've detected it there. I may cancel now.
People want to know, is Mexico okay? What islands in the Caribbean?
Exactly. The whole region is a possibility.
All right, let's take a look at the map because we now have 20 confirmed cases here in the United States, mostly in the southern states.
That's right.
We're obviously not in mosquito season, but when the temperatures do start to rise, and we are, what's the level of concern that this thing could really spread?
Well, take a look at this map. This is the distribution of the mosquito we know that transmits this, a limited number of states. But let's look at this other map. This is a map showing another mosquito that we think can do it. This summer, when mosquitoes are very active, we need to be very vigilant and take mosquitoes very seriously.
Okay, and then hundreds of thousands of people are traveling to Brazil this summer for the Olympics. We already have a pandemic on our hands. What could happen?
Well, the big concern with global events, people come in, and the big fear is that they're going to go home with more than souvenirs. This is already a pandemic. It's spreading very rapidly. Events like the Olympics could...
What I've written in the Harvard Public Health Review is that the Olympics ought to be postponed or moved, not canceled. I don't want the Olympics to go away. I love them too much for that. But the problem we have is that in Rio de Janeiro, that is the heart of the Zika epidemic in Brazil, an epidemic that is thought to have given rise to as many as 5,000 brain-damaged babies. If 500,000 visitors, as is expected, come to Brazil for the Games, into the heart of that epidemic, some will become infected, some will go home, and that epidemic brain-damaged kids will go global faster and farther.
You mentioned the medical implications there. Why do you think the authorities haven't done enough to inform the public?
Well, you know, of course there's money at stake, billions when it comes to the Olympics, and the International Olympic Committee is saying everything's fine here, but they would, wouldn't they? I mean, they have a financial interest, they're in a conflict of interest. What we know, though, is because of very recent science that has come out in only about the last month, is that the Brazilian epidemic was started by a single infected person bringing the virus to South America. One person. Now imagine the effect of sending 500,000 people into Rio. Some of them get infected, some go home. This is not a risk we should take when all that needs to be done is postpone or move the Olympics, not cancel them.
How close are we to Zika being a full-blown health disaster?
Awfully close. I mean, as it stands today, there have been sporadic cases of Zika reported in 49 countries. This is not something that we can keep bottled up in Brazil. But what we can do is prevent really about 3,000 aircraft worth of people scattering it around the globe. And that is the issue.
the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia, we will be tabling a bill in the House of Commons to ensure the full protection of transgender people. And I am proud to also announce that I will attend Montreal Pride this summer, which is just a regular part of my summer schedule, but a very first for a Prime Minister. Because we must continue to demand true equality. We must carry on the legacy of those who fought for justice by being bold and ambitious in our actions, and we must work diligently to close the gap between our principles and our reality.
Changed in the last few decades.
This is a message to all Canadians that we live in a time where discrimination in any form is completely unacceptable.
Here's what's being proposed, including gender identity and gender expression in the Canadian Human Rights Act, meaning, for instance, you can't be fired, refused an apartment, or service at a restaurant for being transgender. Also, changes to the criminal code, adding hate crime sentencing when someone is targeted for their gender identity or gender expression. Hate speech laws would also be updated.
Well, if you desexed society, you dehumanized society. And that's what this is really all about. You've been talking about this for a long time. It's not about gender inclusivity. It's about redefining what sex is, what gender is. And we're just at the beginning of this. How far are they going to take this? I mean, we are just at the beginning of this whole transgender thing. And they're already making federal laws where you can be fined if you refuse to call someone they. You know, I mean,
They want to arrest you 5 years in prison in Canada if you say you don't believe in transgenderism. Well, I mean, how about I believe the moon's made of cheese? Whether I'm wrong or right, do I have free speech or not? And now, I mean, listen, I'm not kidding. See, they're saying, oh yeah, it'll be next is going to be our houses, restaurants, our homes. You watch, with all the zoning where Germany 6 years ago passed a law saying no new single home dwellings in Germany. People didn't believe it. Now Austin's talking about doing that. Yeah. They're actually social engineering the standard biology of humans out of existence. This is a takeover. This is a plan. This isn't a game.
News for Canadians, they can now legally engage in sex acts with animals. Yes, Warner Todd Houston for Breitbart reports, independent. The High Court's lone dissenter, though, said the ruling would mean open season for the sexual exploitation of animals. Yeah, they write here, the question is now a troublesome one here in the United States as well, dividing liberals and serving as a watchword for to conservatives. They state that the U.S. and Canada are no outliers in having a mixed record with dealing with bestiality. They write a recent article from the Daily Mail lamented that the troubling new trend of animal brothels are rising in Germany. Many humans are claiming sex with animals is just another lifestyle choice. Yeah. So first we do a story on the Mount Prospect baby fetish store, where you can dress up as a child and live out your sexual fantasies of and become sexually aroused wearing an adult diaper with a pacifier. And now animal brothels springing up in Germany, and now Canada legitimizes the fact that you can have sexual acts with animals as long as you're not penetrating or being penetrated by. Just another lifestyle choice on this planet. Yes. Please, come quickly, Lord, and relieve us of the burden of the insanity on this planet. What are your